Adam Pearce just walked out onto Monday Night Raw and did something so shocking, so unprecedented, so absolutely insane that I had to watch it 3 times just to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. He fired Paul Heyman. Live. On stage. In front of millions of viewers around the world. And before you click away thinking this is just another wrestling storyline, just another manufactured controversy designed to get people talking on social media, let me tell you something that's going to absolutely blow your mind. This wasn't scripted drama. This wasn't a work. This was WWE publicly executing one of the most important figures in professional wrestling history, and they did it in the most brutal, most disrespectful, most cold-blooded way imaginable. The Wiseman, the special counsel to the tribal chief, the man who literally built Roman Reigns into the biggest star in the company, was stripped of everything he had, humiliated in front of the entire world, and thrown out of the arena like yesterday's garbage. But here's the part that should have you absolutely furious right now, the part that should have you typing in the comments section before I even finish the sentence. WWE just erased 20+ years of genius, innovation, and loyalty with a single segment, and they smiled while they did it. Now stay with me because what I'm about to reveal gets even more disturbing. The way this went down, the specific words Adam Pearce used, the timing of when this happened, all of it points to something much bigger than just a simple firing. There's a power struggle happening behind the scenes at WWE right now, and Paul Heyman just became the first major casualty. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you through exactly what happened on Raw, moment by moment, because if you blinked, if you went to grab a drink or check your phone, you missed details that completely changed the meaning of everything we witnessed. The show opened normally. Pyro exploded across the stage, the crowd was electric, the energy in that arena was exactly what you'd expect from Monday Night Raw. And then something strange happened. The music shifted. Adam Pearce's entrance theme hit, and immediately, you could feel the atmosphere change. This is important, so pay attention. Adam Pearce doesn't open shows. He's not a performer. He's not someone who craves the spotlight or needs to be on camera. He's an authority figure, someone who handles business backstage, someone who only appears when there's a serious announcement that can't wait. The crowd knew something was wrong. You could hear it in their reaction. That initial pop of excitement quickly turned into confused murmuring. People started looking at each other, pointing at the stage, wondering what could possibly be so urgent that Adam Pearce needed to interrupt the normal flow of the show. He walked down that ramp, and here's where it gets interesting. Watch his body language if you go back and look at the footage. This wasn't the usual confident stride of a WWE official making a routine announcement. Pearce looked tense. His jaw was clenched. His hands gripped that microphone like he was holding onto it for dear life. He climbed into the ring, didn't acknowledge the crowd, didn't do any of the normal pleasantries that usually accompany these segments. He just stood there in the center of the ring, staring at the entrance ramp, waiting. The silence was deafening. And then he started talking about accountability. But not just any accountability. He talked about how WWE is a company built on trust, on professionalism, on people doing their jobs with integrity and respect for the business. He talked about how everyone, from the superstars who perform in the ring to the crew members who set up the equipment, needs to uphold certain standards. And the way he said it, the venom in his voice, you knew this wasn't a general statement. This was personal. This was directed at someone specific. And then he said the name that made the entire arena erupt. Paul Heyman. He demanded that Paul Heyman come to the ring immediately. Not requested. Not asked politely. Demanded. Like a principal calling a student to the office. Like a boss summoning an employee who's about to get fired. The crowd went absolutely ballistic. People jumped out of their seats. Phones came out everywhere as fans started recording. The camera operators clearly didn't know where to focus because they kept cutting between Adam Pearce in the ring, the entrance ramp, and the shocked faces of fans in the audience. For what felt like an eternity but was probably only about 30 seconds, nothing happened. Complete silence except for the buzzing confusion of thousands of people trying to figure out what was going on. And then, finally, Paul Heyman's music hit. Now here's where you need to understand the significance of this moment. Paul Heyman walking out to that ring wasn't unusual. He's done it hundreds of times over the years. But the context, the way he was summoned, the look on Adam Pearce's face, all of it created this sense of impending doom. And yet, when Paul Heyman appeared at the top of the ramp, he looked completely unbothered. He was wearing one of his expensive tailored suits, that trademark smirk on his face, walking with the casual confidence of someone who thinks they're untouchable. And why wouldn't he think that? For years, Paul Heyman has been protected at the highest levels of WWE. He's not just a manager or an advocate. He's a creative force. He's the guy who sits in booking meetings and helps shape storylines. He's the guy who has the ear of the top executives. He's the guy who made Brock Lesnar a household name and turned Roman Reigns into the biggest star in the company. So when he walked down that ramp, slowly, deliberately, soaking in the moment like he always does, he had absolutely no idea what was about to happen. He climbed into the ring, stood across from Adam Pearce, and started to speak. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is. And Adam Pearce cut him off. Immediately. Didn't let him finish his signature catchphrase. Didn't let him work the crowd. Just shut him down completely. I didn't bring you out here to talk, Paul. I brought you out here to listen. The look on Paul Heyman's face in that moment was something I've never seen before. This is a man who's always in control, who always has a comeback, who always knows what to say. But right then, he looked genuinely confused. Maybe even a little worried. And that's when Adam Pearce started listing the accusations. This is the part where everything went from shocking to absolutely horrifying. Abuse of power. That was the first charge. Pearce accused Paul Heyman of using his position as special counsel to manipulate superstars, to make decisions that benefited himself and Roman Reigns at the expense of everyone else on the roster. The crowd didn't know whether to cheer or boo. This was uncharted territory. But Pearce wasn't done. He kept going. Unauthorized decisions made without consulting management, creating a toxic work environment backstage. Insubordination. Each accusation hit like a sledgehammer, and Paul Heyman's expression changed with each one. The smugness disappeared. The confidence evaporated. He looked like a man watching his entire world crumble in real time. He tried to interject, tried to defend himself, opened his mouth to launch into one of his legendary promos that would explain everything and turn the situation around. But Adam Pearce wouldn't let him speak. Every time Heyman tried to talk, Pearce talked over him, louder, more aggressively, establishing complete dominance over the segment. And then came the moment that nobody saw coming. Adam Pearce looked Paul Heyman directly in the eyes and said, effective immediately, "You are terminated from your position with WWE. You are fired. Security will escort you from the building, and you are banned from all WWE events going forward." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. The crowd's reaction was split down the middle. Half of them erupted in cheers, caught up in the shock and spectacle of what they were witnessing. The other half sat in stunned silence, unable to process what had just happened. Paul Heyman stood frozen, completely motionless. For maybe the first time in his entire career, Paul Heyman had nothing to say. He finally found his voice and tried to respond. "Adam, you don't understand what you're doing. You can't just..." But he never got to finish that sentence because security guards appeared from backstage. Not one or two. At least 6 security personnel surrounded the ring, climbed through the ropes, and positioned themselves around Paul Heyman like he was a dangerous criminal who needed to be contained. The visual was stunning and disturbing. Here was Paul Heyman, a man in his late 50s, wearing a suit, holding nothing but a microphone, being treated like he posed some kind of physical threat. The guards didn't grab him violently, but they made it very clear he was leaving that ring whether he wanted to or not. Paul Heyman looked around at the security, looked back at Adam Pearce one more time with an expression that seemed to say "You're making a huge mistake," and then allowed himself to be escorted out of the ring. The cameras followed him all the way up the ramp, all the way through the curtain, capturing every second of his humiliation. And Adam Pearce just stood in the ring, watching, showing absolutely no emotion, no remorse, nothing. Once Heyman disappeared backstage, Pearce raised the microphone one more time and said, "WWE will continue to uphold the highest standards of professionalism. Anyone who thinks they're above the rules will face the same consequences." Then he dropped the mic and left the ring to a mixture of cheers and boos from the completely confused audience. Now let me tell you why this is one of the most disrespectful, short-sighted, absolutely idiotic decisions WWE has made in years, and trust me, that's saying something considering some of the boneheaded moves this company has made over the decades. Paul Heyman isn't just some guy who stands ringside and holds a microphone. He's not just another manager in a long line of managers who come and go. Paul Heyman is a revolutionary. He's a visionary. He's someone who has fundamentally changed professional wrestling multiple times throughout his career. And to understand why firing him is such a catastrophic mistake, you need to understand his history. Let's go back to the 1990s. WWE and WCW were locked in the Monday Night Wars, battling for supremacy in the wrestling world. But there was a third promotion that, despite having a fraction of the budget and resources, was influencing the entire industry. ECW. Extreme Championship Wrestling. And the man behind it all was Paul Heyman. He took wrestlers that WWE and WCW didn't want, guys who were considered too small, too violent, too unconventional, and he built an entire promotion around them. He created a style of wrestling that was grittier, more realistic, more intense than anything else on television. He gave wrestlers complete creative freedom to develop their characters and tell stories that mattered. Steve Austin went through ECW. Mick Foley became a star in ECW. Chris Jericho, Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio, all of them passed through ECW at some point and were influenced by Paul Heyman's creative vision. The promos, the violence, the storytelling techniques that ECW pioneered became the blueprint for the Attitude Era, the most successful period in WWE history. Vince McMahon literally borrowed ideas from Paul Heyman's playbook to win the Monday Night Wars. And how does WWE repay that contribution to the business? by having security drag him out of the arena on live television. But it gets worse. When ECW eventually folded due to financial problems, Paul Heyman could have walked away from wrestling. He could have been bitter, could have blamed the industry for not supporting his vision. Instead, he went to WWE and immediately proved his value again. His first major assignment was working with Brock Lesnar, a rookie who had all the physical tools but needed someone to give him a personality, a voice, a reason for fans to care about him beyond his impressive athletic abilities. Paul Heyman became Brock's advocate and created one of the most iconic pairings in wrestling history. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Paul Heyman, and I am the advocate for the reigning, defending, undisputed WWE champion, Brock Lesnar. That phrase became legendary. It became something fans would chant along with. It elevated Brock Lesnar from a talented wrestler to a legitimate superstar. Every title Brock won, every legendary match he had, Paul Heyman was there building the narrative, making it mean something, making fans invested in the outcome. Their partnership lasted for years and produced some of the most memorable moments in WWE history. And then there's CM Punk. The summer of 2011. The pipe bomb promo that changed professional wrestling forever. CM Punk sitting on the stage, microphone in hand, shooting on WWE, on John Cena, on the entire system, speaking truths that fans had been thinking for years but never heard acknowledged on WWE programming. That promo didn't happen in a vacuum. Paul Heyman was working with CM Punk during that period, helping him craft his message, helping him find his voice. When CM Punk needed an advocate after turning heel, who did he choose? Paul Heyman. Together, they created television magic. They had matches and storylines that are still talked about today, that are still studied by people trying to understand what makes professional wrestling special. But perhaps, and I cannot stress this enough, perhaps Paul Heyman's greatest achievement, the thing that should make his job absolutely secure for life, is what he did with Roman Reigns. Remember when Roman was the most booed man in WWE? When fans were actively rejecting him despite WWE's desperate attempts to make him the next John Cena? Roman would come out, and entire arenas would boo him out of the building. It was embarrassing for everyone involved. WWE kept pushing him, and fans kept rejecting him. The company was at a crossroads. They had invested everything in Roman Reigns becoming their top star, and it was failing spectacularly. Enter Paul Heyman. The alliance between Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman changed everything. Suddenly, Roman had the edge he was missing. He had the promos, the character depth, the storytelling that made fans actually want to watch him. Heyman helped transform Roman from a rejected babyface into the tribal chief, the most dominant, most compelling character in professional wrestling. Their partnership produced one of the longest, most successful championship reigns in WWE history. Roman became the guy. The ratings improved. Merchandise sales went up. Social media engagement exploded. And all of it had Paul Heyman's fingerprints on it. So when Adam Pearce walks out and fires Paul Heyman, when WWE decides they can just discard someone who has done all of this, someone who has contributed so much to the company's success, it's not just disrespectful. It's business malpractice. It's cutting off your nose to spite your face. It's destroying value for no logical reason. And the way they did it makes it even worse. They didn't quietly let him go. They didn't give him a respectful send-off. They humiliated him on live television in front of millions of people. They accused him of abusing power and creating a toxic environment, accusations that, by the way, we've never seen any evidence of throughout his entire time with Roman Reigns. Think about what message this sends to everyone else in WWE. If Paul Heyman, one of the most valuable, most protected people in the company, can be fired without warning on live television, then nobody is safe. It doesn't matter what you've accomplished. It doesn't matter how important you are to the company's success. WWE can decide at any moment that you're expendable, and they'll dispose of you without hesitation or appreciation. That's terrifying for anyone who works there. How can writers take creative risks when they just watched Paul Heyman get publicly fired? How can producers speak up with innovative ideas when they know the company has no loyalty? This creates a culture of fear, and fear is the enemy of creativity. Let's also talk about the timing, because this makes absolutely no sense from a creative standpoint. The Bloodline storyline is still ongoing. It's one of the most successful, most talked about storylines in modern WWE history. Paul Heyman has been absolutely essential to making it work. His promos with Roman, his scheming, his interactions with the rest of the Bloodline, all of that has been the glue holding everything together. So what happens now? How does WWE plan to continue this storyline without the person who's been central to its success? Are they just going to pretend Paul Heyman never existed? Are they going to bring in someone else to replace him and hope fans don't notice the massive drop in quality? Or, and this is what really worries me, are they planning to completely change direction with Roman Reigns? Are they going to derail the most successful character they've built in years because they fired the person who helped create that character? None of this makes any sense. Paul Heyman makes WWE better. His presence elevates everyone around him. When he's on screen, people pay attention. When he cuts a promo, people believe every single word. He has this incredible ability to make storylines feel important, feel real, feel like they actually matter in the grand scheme of things. Firing him doesn't just hurt Paul Heyman, it hurts WWE. It hurts the product. It hurts the fans who have been invested in the stories he's helped create. And for what? What did WWE gain from this? A shocking moment that will trend on Twitter for a few hours? A viral clip that will get shared on social media for a couple of days? That's temporary. That's meaningless in the long run. But the damage caused by losing someone like Paul Heyman, that's permanent. That's a wound that doesn't heal. You can't just replace a Paul Heyman. You can't just find another creative genius who understands professional wrestling at the level he does. Those people don't exist. They're one of a kind. And WWE just threw theirs away. Let me address the accusations Adam Pearce made, because this is important. Abuse of power. Manipulation of talent. Unauthorized decisions. These are serious charges, and if they were real, if Paul Heyman had genuinely been doing things that harmed WWE or other wrestlers, then maybe there would be some justification for firing him. But here's the problem. We've never seen any evidence of this. Throughout Paul Heyman's entire run with Roman Reigns, everything he's done has been in service of making Roman look like the most dominant champion in WWE. Everything he's done has been approved by WWE creative, by management, by the very people who are now claiming he went rogue. This feels like revisionist history. It feels like WWE is retroactively trying to paint Paul Heyman as a villain so they can justify getting rid of him. And that's cowardly. That's pathetic. If WWE wanted to end Paul Heyman's run with Roman Reigns, there were so many better ways to do it. They could have had Roman turn on him in a moment of paranoia, firing him as special counsel in a dramatic storyline that would have given both characters something meaningful to do. They could have had Heyman written off temporarily while Roman embarked on a new chapter of his career. Those would have been creative solutions that served the story and respected Paul Heyman's contributions. But instead, they had Adam Pearce, a non-character authority figure who exists solely to make announcements and enforce rules, come out and fire him for vague corporate reasons. It's lazy. It's uninspired. It's boring. And worst of all, it's disrespectful to Paul Heyman and to every fan who has been following his work for the past 20+ years. We deserved better. Paul Heyman deserved better. This business deserved better. So what happens next? Where does WWE go from here without Paul Heyman? How do they fill the void left by one of the greatest minds in the history of professional wrestling? I honestly don't know. Maybe they have a plan. Maybe this is all part of some elaborate storyline that will make sense in a few weeks. Maybe Paul Heyman will return and this will all be revealed as a work. But based on everything I've seen, based on how WWE operates, based on their track record of making terrible decisions and then doubling down on those decisions, I'm not optimistic. I think they made a massive mistake. I think they let corporate politics and ego get in the way of good storytelling, and I think we're all going to suffer because of it. I want to hear from you in the comments right now. Do you think WWE made the right decision? Do you think this is a work or a shoot? How do you think this affects Roman Reigns and the bloodline going forward? And most importantly, what should Paul Heyman do next? Should he go to AEW and help them compete with WWE? Should he start his own promotion? Should he retire and walk away from the business entirely? Let me know your thoughts. And make sure you share this video with every wrestling fan you know because this conversation needs to happen. WWE just made one of the most controversial, most shocking, most potentially disastrous decisions in recent memory, and we need to talk about it. Before I wrap this up, I need to make one final point, and this is the part that makes me the angriest. Paul Heyman has always been someone who puts wrestling first. He's always cared more about the business, about creating memorable moments, about making wrestling the best it can possibly be, than he's cared about his own personal gain. When ECW was dying, when he wasn't getting paid, when he was mortgaging his house to keep the company running, he didn't give up. He kept working because he believed in what he was creating. When he came to WWE, he could have coasted on his reputation, but instead he reinvented himself over and over again, finding new ways to stay relevant, new talent to work with and elevate. He's dedicated his entire adult life to professional wrestling, and this is how WWE repays him? With a public execution? With accusations and humiliation? With security guards treating him like a criminal? It's disgusting. It's unacceptable. And it shows you exactly what WWE thinks about loyalty, about history, about respecting the people who helped build this company into what it is today. They don't care. Once you're no longer useful to them, once they've squeezed every last bit of value out of you, they'll throw you away without a second thought. We've seen it happen to wrestlers. We've seen it happen to writers and producers and backstage personnel. And now we're seeing it happen to Paul Heyman, someone who should have been protected, someone who should have been valued, someone who should have been treated with respect and dignity. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you. Thank you for caring about this business enough to listen to everything I had to say. Drop a comment, smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and share this video everywhere. WWE needs to know that fans are paying attention, that we're not okay with this, and that Paul Heyman deserves so much better than what he got. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.